Rich man forces black waitress to play piano to mock her, but her talent leaves him speechless. Have you ever looked at someone and thought you knew their story, only to realize later you couldn't have been more wrong? Sometimes, the people we overlook, the ones we underestimate, are carrying stories so profound they could leave us speechless. Tonight, I want to share one of those stories with you, a story about Malika. Malika is a young woman who has seen more than her fair share of struggle. At just 28 years old, she's experienced a lifetime of challenges that would make most people crumble. But Malika isn't most people. She's beautiful, yes, with skin that glows in the sunlight and eyes that seem to hold entire oceans of quiet strength. But her beauty is only the beginning. What truly defines Malika is her resilience, her ability to keep going when the world seems determined to push her down. From the time she was a little girl, Malika understood what it meant to feel different. Growing up as a black girl in a world that often judged her by the color of her skin, she learned quickly that life wouldn't always be fair. The whispers behind her back were constant, the unspoken barriers unavoidable. Teachers assumed she wouldn't excel. Store clerks watched her too closely. Neighbors judged her family without ever getting to know them. It wasn't just the big, obvious acts of discrimination. It was the small, insidious ways the world reminded her that she had to work harder just to stand in the same place as others. Her childhood was filled with moments of heartbreak and determination. She remembers walking home from school with her head held high, even when the kids on the playground called her names. She remembers her mother's gentle hands combing her hair and whispering, "You're strong, baby. You're worth more than this world can see right now." Those words stayed with her, a flicker of hope she held onto when the world felt too heavy to bear. Now, as an adult, Malika works as a waitress in an upscale restaurant. It's not the kind of job she ever dreamed of as a little girl, but it's honest work, and it keeps her going. Every shift is long. Every smile she gives to customers is practiced and polite, even on days when she's so tired she can barely stand. But she needs every penny. Every tip matters because it means she can keep the lights on, pay the rent, and take care of her 6-year-old son, Jeremiah. Jeremiah is her pride and joy, the light of her life. He has her eyes, wide and curious, and a laugh that can brighten even her darkest days. Every morning, she wakes up before the sun rises, making breakfast for him and helping him get ready for school. She walks him to the bus stop, holding his small hand in hers, and when he turns to wave goodbye, she feels a mix of pride and sadness. Pride, because he's growing into a kind, thoughtful boy. Sadness, because she knows how much he misses his father. Marcus, her partner, is stationed overseas in the military. The distance is hard, harder than she lets on to anyone. There are nights when Jeremiah looks up at her with big, questioning eyes and asks, "When's Daddy coming home, Mama?" And Malika has no answers to give him, only reassurances she hopes will be true. "Soon, baby," she says, her voice soft, even when she's unsure. The loneliness creeps in during the quiet hours of the night. After Jeremiah is asleep and the apartment is still, Malika sometimes sits at the small kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills that never seems to shrink. She thinks about Marcus, about the sacrifices he's making for their family, and she feels a mixture of longing and determination. She misses him deeply, but she knows why they're doing this, why they both keep pushing forward, even when it feels like the weight of the world is on their shoulders. Despite everything, Malika holds on to hope. She dreams of giving Jeremiah the life she never had, a life where he feels safe, loved, and seen for who he is. And though the road ahead is uncertain, she reminds herself of the lessons her mother taught her. That strength doesn't come from an easy life. It comes from facing adversity head-on and refusing to let it define you. Malika's story is one of quiet strength, of resilience in the face of challenges most of us will never understand. But her story isn't over. It's just beginning. And tonight, you'll see how one extraordinary moment changes everything for her, revealing not just her talent, but the power of her spirit. Now, as an adult, Malika works as a waitress in an upscale restaurant. It's not the kind of job anyone dreams of as a little girl, but it's honest work, and it pays the bills. She needs every penny to take care of her 6-year-old son, Jeremiah. He's her pride and joy, the reason she gets up every morning and pushes through the exhaustion. Jeremiah has his mother's eyes and a laugh that can light up a room. Malika works tirelessly to give him the life she never had, even though it often feels like an uphill battle. Her partner, Marcus, is in the military, stationed overseas. The distance is hard, but they both know why they're making these sacrifices. Marcus is fighting for his country, and Malika is fighting for their family. But the separation isn't easy. There are nights when Jeremiah asks when Daddy's coming home, and Malika has no answer. There are nights when the loneliness creeps in, and all she has to hold on to is the promise of a better future. At the restaurant, Malika is used to dealing with difficult customers. People who look right past her, speak down to her, or dismiss her as if she's invisible. It stings every time, but she swallows her pride and keeps going. She doesn't have the luxury of letting it get to her. She's learned to smile through the insults, to nod politely even when her heart is breaking. But deep down, she's tired. Tired of being overlooked. Tired of being judged. Tired of the constant struggle. Still, Malika has a secret. When she was a little girl, she dreamed of being a pianist. Her mother, back when things were better, used to sing while Malika played on an old keyboard they'd found at a thrift store. Music was her escape, her safe place. But dreams don't always survive the harshness of reality. The keyboard broke, her mother passed away, and Malika was left to navigate the world on her own. The dream of music faded, buried under the weight of responsibility. But some nights when Jeremiah is asleep and the world is quiet, Malika pulls out an old keyboard she managed to save up for. It's not much, half the keys don't work, and it's scratched and battered. But to Malika, it's a reminder of who she once was. She plays softly, pouring her heart into melodies no one else will ever hear. In those moments, she feels free. It's her way of praying, of connecting to something greater than herself. It's a reminder that no matter how hard life gets, there's still beauty in the world. This is where our story begins. With Malika, a young woman carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, doing everything she can to create a better life for her son. She doesn't know it yet, but her life is about to change. Not because of luck or circumstance, but because of her strength, her talent, and her unwavering belief in the possibility of something more. And it all starts with one evening at the restaurant. An evening that will push Malika to her limits and force her to confront not only the prejudice of others, but also her own fears. What happens next is a testament to the power of grace, resilience, and the surprising ways life can turn when we least expect it. Malika's days followed a predictable rhythm, waking up before dawn, getting Jeremiah ready for school, and walking him to the bus stop with a kiss on his cheek and a whispered, "I love you." From there, it was a long commute to the restaurant, where she would tie on her apron, paste on a professional smile, and face another day of juggling orders and dodging rude comments. She had no time to rest, no room for mistakes. Every tip, every paycheck mattered. The restaurant was a world of polished silverware, spotless tablecloths, and customers who barely noticed the staff unless something went wrong. It wasn't uncommon for people to wave her over with a flick of their hand or bark out orders as if she were invisible otherwise. Malika bore it all with quiet dignity. She had to. There was too much at stake to let anyone see how much it hurt. But this day was different. It started like any other. The restaurant hummed with the soft clinking of glasses and low murmurs of conversation. Malika moved swiftly between tables, her tray balanced expertly on her hand. She was in the middle of refilling a customer's water glass when she noticed him, Mr. Carter. His presence wasn't something you could miss. He strolled into the room as though he owned it, his tailored suit sharp, his shoes gleaming, and his expression one of supreme confidence. Malika didn't know him personally, but his reputation preceded him. He was a man who thrived on power and control, someone who demanded respect without ever offering it in return. He wasn't a regular at the restaurant, but when he did come in, it was as if the air itself shifted. Conversations dimmed, servers exchanged nervous glances, and the manager all but tripped over himself to greet him. Malika's heart sank. She had dealt with men like him before. They always made her job harder, turning the smallest things into personal affronts, treating her like she was less than human. She braced herself as he was seated at one of her tables, his loud voice carrying across the room as he greeted his dining companions with exaggerated laughter. It didn't take long for the comments to start. "Miss, this plate isn't exactly hot, is it? Do you think you could manage to fix that?" His voice dripped with condescension as he pushed the plate toward her without looking up. She forced a polite smile and took the plate, biting back the urge to respond. A few minutes later, "Is the service always this slow, or is today a special occasion?" And then, "Do you even know what you're doing?" Each remark cut deeper than the last, but Malika held her ground. She reminded herself of Jeremiah, of the bills she had to pay, of the sacrifices she was making to keep their lives afloat. She wouldn't let him get to her, but Mr. Carter wasn't done. As the evening wore on, his remarks grew louder, drawing the attention of other diners. His laughter echoed through the room as he turned his focus entirely on Malika. "You know," he said, leaning back in his chair with a smirk, "I always wonder about people like you. What's your story, Did you dream of being a waitress, or is this just where you ended up?" Malika felt her cheeks burn. She kept her gaze steady, refusing to let him see her falter. "I'm here to serve you tonight, sir. If there's anything else you need, please let me know." "Oh, there is something," he said, his eyes lighting up with a spark of cruelty. He pointed across the room, where a grand piano stood in the corner, polished and gleaming. It was mostly decorative, played occasionally during brunches by a hired musician. "Why don't you play us something? Surely someone with your background has a little talent, right? Prove me wrong." The room went silent. All eyes turned to Malika. Her heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of their gazes, some curious, some sympathetic, and a few filled with the same quiet amusement that mirrored Mr. Carter's expression. Her throat tightened as she searched for the right words. How could she respond without making things worse? How could she keep her dignity when she was being mocked so openly? "I don't think that's appropriate," she managed to say, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. But Mr. Carter wouldn't let it go. He leaned forward, his smirk widening. "Oh, come on, don't be shy, show us what you've got. Unless, of course, you're afraid you might embarrass yourself." The challenge hung in the air, heavy and impossible to ignore. Malika glanced around the room, seeing the mixture of emotions on the faces of the other diners. She knew she didn't have to do it. She could walk away, refuse, and let the humiliation roll off her shoulders like she always did. But something inside her stirred. A quiet voice that told her this moment was different. This wasn't just about her. It was about Jeremiah, about the dreams she had buried, about proving to herself and everyone in that room that she was more than what they saw. Taking a deep breath, Malika stepped forward. Malika stood frozen for a moment, staring at the piano across the room. It seemed so far away, like it existed in a different world, a world she had left behind long ago. The polished surface reflected the soft glow of the restaurant's chandeliers, and she could almost see her younger self sitting there, fingers flying over the keys, playing with abandon, playing like she had nothing to prove. But that was a lifetime ago. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. All eyes were on her, waiting to see what she would do. Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair, a smug grin on his face, clearly enjoying the spectacle. He didn't expect her to actually do it. He just wanted to humiliate her, to remind her of her place. And yet, Malika felt something shift inside her. A fire ignited, a deep, unshakable resolve. She wasn't going to let him win. Not this time. Without saying a word, she walked toward the piano. Her steps were slow, deliberate, but her mind raced. Doubts flooded in. What if she had forgotten how to play? What if she failed, and this moment became yet another reminder of how far she had fallen from her dreams? She clenched her fists, trying to block out the noise in her head. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about standing up to all the people who had tried to keep her down, about showing Jeremiah that strength comes in many forms. When she reached the piano, she hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keys. The room was so quiet, she could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning, the faint clink of a glass being set down. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and pressed a single key. The sound was rich and resonant, and it sent a shiver through her. It had been so long. She placed both hands on the keys, her fingers trembling slightly, and began to play. The first few notes were tentative, almost unsure, but as the melody unfolded, something inside her shifted. Her hands moved with growing confidence, weaving a song that was both haunting and beautiful. It wasn't just music. It was a story, her story, told through every rise and fall of the melody. The pain, the struggle, the resilience, it was all there, pouring out of her and filling the room. The diners, who had initially been watching with mild curiosity or amusement, were now captivated. Conversations ceased, forks hovered in mid-air, and even the waitstaff stopped what they were doing to listen. The music was unlike anything they had expected. It was raw, emotional, and deeply personal. It spoke to something universal, something that transcended words. As Malika played, memories flooded her mind. She thought of her mother, singing softly as she played the keyboard in their tiny living room. She thought of the nights she stayed up late, practicing until her fingers ached, dreaming of one day performing on a stage. She thought of Jeremiah, of the sacrifices she had made for him, of the nights she had cried herself to sleep, wondering if she was doing enough. All of it poured into the music, creating a tapestry of sound that left no room for doubt. This was her truth. By the time she reached the final notes, her heart was pounding, her hands trembling from the intensity of the performance. She opened her eyes, blinking against the tears that had welled up without her realizing. The room was utterly still. For a moment, she thought no one would react, that her effort had been in vain. But then, slowly, the sound of clapping began to rise. It started with one person, then another, until the entire room was filled with thunderous applause. Malika sat back, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. She looked out at the crowd, at the faces that had once held pity or disdain, but were now filled with awe. Mr. Carter sat at his table, his smug grin wiped clean from his face. He stared at her, his mouth slightly open, as if he couldn't quite process what had just happened. For the first time that evening, he was silent. A woman near the back of the room stood up, clapping enthusiastically. "That was incredible," she said, her voice cutting through the applause. Others murmured in agreement, and Malika felt a warmth spread through her. She had done it. She had reclaimed a part of herself she thought she had lost forever. As the applause died down, Mr. Carter finally spoke. His voice was quieter now, lacking its earlier arrogance. "I didn't know you could play like that," he said, his words stumbling slightly. "That was remarkable." Malika didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her music had spoken for her, louder and clearer than any words ever could. She stood up, smoothing her apron, and began to walk back to her station. As she passed Mr. Carter's table, she paused just long enough to meet his gaze. There was no anger or triumph in her expression, only calm, quiet strength. And then she walked away, leaving him to sit in stunned silence. In that moment, Malika knew something had changed, not just in the way the people in that room saw her, but in the way she saw herself. She had faced the worst, and she had risen above it. She had reminded herself of the power she carried within her, a power no one could take away. And as she returned to her work, the fire in her chest still burning bright, she thought of Jeremiah. She couldn't wait to tell him what had happened, not just about the applause or the compliments, but about the lesson she had learned. That no matter how hard life gets, no matter how many people try to push you down, you always have the power to stand tall and show the world who you truly are. The room slowly returned to its usual hum, but the energy had shifted. Malika could feel it. As she moved between tables, clearing dishes and refilling glasses, people stole glances at her. The pity and indifference she was so accustomed to were gone, replaced by something unfamiliar: respect. It was strange, almost unsettling, to be seen in a way she hadn't been before. She avoided Mr. Carter's table as long as she could, focusing on other customers who now offered her small, kind smiles. A couple at a nearby table whispered to her, "You're incredibly talented. That was beautiful." Malika thanked them softly, trying to keep the overwhelming emotions at bay. She wasn't used to compliments, let alone from strangers. But eventually, she had to return to Mr. Carter's table. As she approached, she noticed he wasn't laughing or talking loudly anymore. He sat stiffly, his gaze distant, as if he was lost in thought. His companions were quiet too, clearly unsure of what to say. When Malika set a fresh glass of water in front of him, he looked up, and for the first time that evening, his expression was vulnerable. "Miss," he started, his voice lower than before, "I owe you an apology." Malika froze for a moment, caught off guard. This wasn't the man who had walked into the restaurant hours earlier, brimming with arrogance. His tone was almost humble. "I've spent my life making snap judgments about people," he continued, his words deliberate, as if he were choosing them carefully. "I've assumed things about you tonight, about your abilities, your worth, that were not only wrong, but unfair. What you did back there, it was extraordinary. I didn't deserve to witness it after the way I treated you." The sincerity in his voice caught Malika off guard. She studied him for a moment, trying to gauge if he was genuine. His eyes didn't have the mocking gleam they had earlier. They were softer now, almost apologetic. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions she felt. "I appreciate that." Mr. Carter nodded, but he didn't seem satisfied. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, then leaned forward slightly. "You shouldn't be here," he said, almost to himself. "Not as a waitress, I mean. You have a gift. The world needs to hear it." Malika felt her chest tighten. She wanted to tell him that the world didn't care about her gift, that it hadn't for a long time, but she didn't. Instead, she simply said, "Sometimes life doesn't give us the luxury of following our dreams." Mr. Carter looked as though he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Instead, he nodded again, this time with a hint of understanding. As Malika turned to leave, he stopped her with a hesitant question. "Do you still play? Outside of this, I mean?" She hesitated. "Sometimes," she admitted. "When I have the time." He nodded again, but his expression was unreadable. Malika walked away, her heart heavy. She didn't want to let herself hope for anything more. Hope had failed her too many times. The next morning, she was back to her routine, making Jeremiah's breakfast, packing his lunch, and walking him to the bus stop. The events of the previous night lingered in her mind, but she pushed them aside. She didn't have time to dwell on them. There was work to do, bills to pay. Later that afternoon, as she was getting ready for her shift, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her pick up. "Hello, is this Malika?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" she replied, her guard immediately going up. "This is Carter from last night." Malika's stomach dropped. Why was he calling her? Had she done something wrong? Had he decided, after all that, to complain to her manager? "I hope I'm not intruding," he said quickly, as if sensing her unease. "I got your number from the restaurant's manager. I couldn't stop thinking about your performance last night. It was remarkable. I wanted to see if you'd be interested in playing at an event I'm hosting." Malika blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "An event?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "It's a fundraiser. A lot of influential people will be there, people who could help you take your talent to the next level. You'd be the highlight of the evening." Malika didn't know what to say. She felt her defenses rising, a part of her screaming not to trust him. But another part, the part that remembered how it had felt to play, to be seen, was intrigued. "I don't know," she said finally. "I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that." "Please," Mr. Carter said, his tone earnest. "Just think about it. No strings attached. If you're not comfortable, you can say no. But I think you have something special, and I'd hate for the world to miss out on it." After he hung up, Malika sat in stunned silence. The offer felt too good to be true, like a trap waiting to spring. But then she thought about Jeremiah, about the life she wanted to give him. She thought about the dream she had buried so long ago and how it had felt, just for a moment, to let it breathe again. By the time she arrived at work that evening, she had made up her mind. She wasn't sure if she could trust Mr. Carter, but she was willing to take the risk. Because for the first time, in a long time, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. As Malika stood outside the venue, the warmth of the applause still echoing in her mind, she felt an unfamiliar sensation, a sense of fulfillment, of peace. The night sky stretched endlessly above her, stars scattered like tiny beacons of hope. She took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill her lungs, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that things could be different. It wasn't just the applause or the compliments that stayed with her. It was the realization that she had done something she thought was impossible. She had stepped out of the shadows of fear and doubt, and in doing so, she had reclaimed a part of herself that had been buried under years of struggle. Her music wasn't just a performance tonight, it was a declaration. A reminder to herself and to the world that no one, not even the harshest critics, could define her worth. Inside the venue, the event was winding down, but Mr. Carter hadn't left yet. He stood near the entrance, watching Malika from a distance. He hesitated, as though debating whether or not to approach her again. Finally, he walked over, his steps slower, less confident than before. "Malika," he said softly, almost as though he didn't want to disturb her thoughts. She turned to face him, her expression calm but unreadable. I wanted to say one more thing." She tilted her head slightly, waiting. "You taught me something tonight," he continued. "Something I should have known all along. You reminded me how blind we can be to other people's stories. I came into that restaurant thinking I understood who you were, but I didn't. I didn't even try to, and for that, I'm sorry." Malika studied him for a moment. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability he rarely let show. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice carrying no bitterness, only quiet strength. "We all have things to learn." Mr. Carter nodded, as though her words carried a weight he would need time to unpack. "I hope this is just the beginning for you," he said. "Your talent deserves to be seen. If there's anything I can do to help, I'd like to." Malika didn't know what the future held, but she knew this moment was a turning point. "We'll see," she said, her tone measured. "For now, I'm just grateful for tonight." He smiled, a genuine smile this time, and after a moment, he walked away. Malika watched him go, a small part of her marveling at how much the night had changed not just her, but the people around her. Perhaps this was what music could do: open hearts, bridge gaps, and create understanding in places where it didn't seem possible. When Malika returned home, Jeremiah was waiting for her, curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around him. His face lit up when he saw her. "Mama!" he exclaimed, jumping up to hug her tightly. "How did it go? Did they love it? I bet they loved it." Malika knelt down to his level, brushing a strand of his hair back from his face. "They did," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But you know what? It wasn't just about them. It was about us. It was about showing you that no matter how hard things get, we can always find a way to rise." Jeremiah beamed, his pride in her shining brighter than the stars outside. "You're the best, Mama." That night, as she tucked him into bed, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her dreams didn't seem so distant anymore. They felt possible, within reach. And even if the journey ahead was still uncertain, she knew she had the strength to face it. She had proven that to herself tonight. The next morning, Malika woke up early, her mind buzzing with ideas and possibilities. She wasn't sure where this new path would lead, but she was ready to explore it. Whether it meant more performances or finding ways to teach Jeremiah the beauty of music, she felt a new sense of direction. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It was a story for anyone who had ever been told they weren't enough, anyone who had been judged unfairly or pushed aside. It was proof that there is power in resilience, beauty in vulnerability, and strength in hope. To you watching this right now, Malika's journey is a reminder that we all have a story worth sharing, a light worth shining. Maybe you've faced challenges that made you feel small. Maybe you've been overlooked or underestimated. If you take one thing away from this story, let it be this: you are more than what the world sees. Your worth isn't defined by others. It's defined by how you rise, how you keep going, and how you hold on to the dreams that make you who you are. Thank you for being here with me today. We're building something special together, a community where stories like Malika's can inspire and uplift. If this story touched your heart, I encourage you to comment below. Share your thoughts, your own experiences, or even just a kind word for someone else who might need it. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. This is more than just a channel. It's a place where we remind each other of the goodness in the world and the strength within ourselves. As we close, let me leave you with this. No matter how dark the night feels, there is always a dawn. Keep going, keep believing, and remember, you are never alone in your journey. I'll see you in the next story. Take care, and God bless.